Crimson Rivers, The Choice, Part 2. James yanks so hard on the handcuffs that his shoulder aches. A starburst of pain that joins the rest in his stomach and leg, nothing compared to the sight of Regulus falling into the river. The strain on his shoulder makes James collide down on his knees, his ears ringing as he curls forward and digs his bloodied hand into the ground, yanking at the grass as he tries fruitlessly to drag himself forward, even if it means ripping his fucking arm off. It doesn't do much in the way of results. It only brings the tilting whirl of the world into sharper focus. James is struggling to breathe, lightheaded and delirious from pain and blood loss, dark edges creeping around the corners of his vision. But he blinks and fights it with all that he has. He can't. He won't do this. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. He had his plan. He made his choice. So this isn't fair. It's not right. James can't. Give him back to me, James chokes out, lifting up to fall back on his heels, glaring up at the sky through his tears. I'm not doing this. Bring him back. Please, just please bring him back. I can't. Please, I love him. No response. It's just him. He's alone here, left to every version of pain there is to feel, only becoming more unbearable by the moment. Even the water is still. James can't bear this. He won't. He never wanted to, and he refuses to let it end like this. The cannon still hasn't sounded, so James shakily fumbles in his pocket, fingers wrapping around the vial of Horcrux hornet venom from Vespa, the last thing Vanity ever held on to. Sirius, I'm so sorry, James croaks, hastily flicking the stopper out of the top of the vial. He takes a deep breath, then exhales. You either give him back to me and let us go home, or you don't get either of us. You told us we can go home, that there can be two victors, and that's what it will be. The two of us, or neither of us. With that, James raises the vial to his mouth, without even a split second of hesitation, his ultimatum announced to the world with nothing but promise. If Regulus dies in that river, James will ingest the venom, and he'll be dead before anyone can reach him. They can't have him, not without Regulus. They can only have them both. So, despite knowing that doing this would cause him excruciating pain, ending in a horrible death, James puts the vial to his lips and turns it up, fully not fucking around. He's going to do this, and he thinks that he won't even notice the difference in pain level. This is excruciating as it is. The venom is thick in the vial, sliding green and shimmery like honey, getting closer and closer to where his mouth is parted. As soon as the cannon sounds, he's drowning it. He closes his eyes, wondering almost hysterically how it will taste. Maybe he'll meet Vanity when this is all over, and he can tell her, because she'll surely be curious to know. Stop! There's a loud splash, and James's eyes snap open as he draws the vial from his mouth, breath catching at the sight of pale hands lifting Regulus out of the water and depositing him back on the bank of the river. Streams of red spill out of him, and he's hacking and coughing as he crawls forward, deep slashes through his clothes that reveal gouges in his skin, pouring blood. He's more of a crimson river than the one he'd just resurfaced from. Congratulations, comes the tight, shaky voice of Slughorn. May I present the victors of the 84th Hunger Games? James drops the vial, wheezing out a harsh breath as his vision blurs. Across from him, bleeding profusely, Regulus is still crawling and choking. James strains forward as far as he can go, reaching out. But Regulus collapses before he ever makes it. The world tilts, going dark, and James collapses too. Horace swallows thickly as he stares at the blown-up screen in the center of the room. On it, James Potter and Regulus Black are slumped on the ground, arms outstretched with their hands only inches from meeting. Sir? Play the victory banners and bring them out, Horace orders, releasing a deep breath as he watches the screen fade into the Hallow emblem, a triangle with a circle inside and a line through it, with pictures of James and Regulus on either side. The helicarriers are dispatched, and Horace grinds his teeth as he glances at the screen displaying James and Regulus's vitals. They're going to live, and now they're expected to. He wonders if James realizes, in his endeavor to save himself and Regulus, he would be condemning someone else. Horace wonders if James did know, would he even care once he realized it was the head game maker he was condemning. Horace had expected Tom to be pleased by the rule change, much like everyone else. He is the master of the Hallows, so surely he would be in support of their excitement and delight with something that had never been done before. Horace had anticipated praise. Horace had not gotten it. The entire point to the Hunger Games is that there can only be one victor, Tom had said, looking at Horace with those chilling eyes of his. You're right, Slughorn. There has never been two. There's a reason for that. Yes, but isn't something new exciting? Horace had asked hopefully, because he had believed in it, because he was so very excited by his idea. 2 victors, 2 young men in love, who get to go home and have their happily ever after. Everyone would love that. Everyone loves a happy ending. Even Horace himself. He was looking forward to it, in fact. Tom Riddle didn't care about that, not one bit. Something new is dangerous. The Hallow doesn't tolerate a threat, not from the outside and not from within. All threats are eliminated. Do you intend to be a threat? No, Horace had been quick to say. Of course not. Then see to it that you don't become one, Tom replied, and Horace knew instantly what he had to do. The problem is, Horace can't fathom how there's a way around this, since James saw to it that only one victor wasn't an option. It was either both of them or neither, all or nothing, and the Hallows would not be satisfied with nothing. There was no easy solution, because even if Horace let Regulus die in that river and dispatched people to get James, he would be dead from the venom before they ever reached him. The only other option was to let James drink the venom and bring Regulus up from the river. But James was waiting for that cannon. Even if Horace brought Regulus up and just let James bleed out, he couldn't be sure that Regulus and James wouldn't collaborate and just die together. They seemed to have reached the point where neither of them were willing to leave that arena alone, and they both proved that they were more than willing to die for that. On top of that, if Horace brought Regulus up and didn't announce them as the victors after all that, the world would surely riot. Horace can't say what the proper answer for this was. There's never been 2 victors, but there's also never been no victors, and Horace's reputation would be in tatters if he disappointed all the viewers in such a way. He only wanted to give the people what they want, and he was in a very difficult position as well. Surely Tom will understand. There's a heavy weight settling in Horace's stomach that makes him think that, no, Tom will not understand. It puts a spike of fear Horace never fully felt before right down the length of his spine. He gives the final orders. Have the victors carted to the infirmary and the mentor notified. And then he slips out of the room. He's staying in a suite towards the back of the building, down on the lower levels, and he goes through the trouble of taking the lift down to the basement level and walking swiftly in between the empty cells of the servants to reach the elevator on the other side, riding it up to his floor. It's quiet on the way to his room, and inside his room, but he can't shake the feeling of paranoia that slithers under his skin. He feels like he needs to move faster, to get away, as if he's being chased, though there's no evidence to back up that claim. It's just the memory of Tom's eyes, the shameless way he'd made it very clear that if Horace were to do something he so happened to dislike, then it would be labeled as a threat and dealt with as all threats are. Horace never meant to become a threat. He has a feeling that Tom won't see it that way, though. Frantically, Horace throws practically his entire wardrobe into his suitcase, then dumps half out and empties nearly the entirety of the liquor cabinet into his bag instead. He starts to grab his cell and laptop, then pauses and remembers each and every personalized ad that popped up after he typed in something specific. indicating that he can be and has always been monitored on the Hallow servers. With suspicion, Horace dumps them on his bed and leaves them behind. Again, when Horace leaves, he takes the lift down to the basement level. He breathes easier as soon as the doors shut, tipping his head back and shutting his eyes. Where shall he go? Where can he go? Not home, of course. Surely someone would allow him to lay low for a bit in the city. He has connections, people who he's sure would help him. All he needs to do is... Ding! Horace's eyes snap open, head lifting up as he steps forward to exit the lift, bag in hand. He keeps his eyes peeled as he moves swiftly through the basement level, heading right for the underground garage that will let him leave the building through the back. He has no car, but he can order one at the pub just up the street, a place he frequents often. As Horace listens to the echo of his shoes snap against the concrete with every step, he comes to the horrifying and dreadful conclusion that he has no earthly idea what he's doing. Trying to hide within a city from a man who runs it is a bit redundant, he would think. All of his connections are people who would, realistically, sell him out the moment they believed it would move them up further in this world. Frankly, Horace has no idea where to go, or even what to do. Is this even necessary? He can't help his own skepticism, but again, there is an instinctive twist in his gut that is telling him it is very necessary. So insistent that he can't even imagine not listening to it. The thought strikes him, but is this what it is to have survival instincts? Proper ones that grip you when you're in danger of, well, not surviving. Is this how it feels for those in the arena, or even a fraction of it? Horace is learning very quickly that the feeling is quite unpleasant, and not as entertaining when it's him, rather than people on a screen. As Horace ducks past the entrance to the garage, skirting around the lowered gate, a smooth voice says, "And just where are you going, Mr. Slughorn?" Jumping slightly, and yelping, Horace whips around with his back clutched to his chest, his heart pounding as pure terror turns the blood in his veins to ice. He finds the culprit quickly, a young woman with a long silver cigarette holder that has a dragon ornament wrapping all the way around it, the mouth open and the fangs where the cigarette goes. She inhales, and it makes the dragon look like the smoke is coming out of its nostrils. His heart calms as he puts a name to her face. "Ah, Miss Meadows," Horace says wearily, deflating slightly. He clears his throat. "You gave me a fright, dear. I must ask, why aren't you inside celebrating? The tributes you designed for are victors, and will surely need your expertise soon." "Oh, they'll have it. Don't you worry about that," Dorcas says. He's quite sure that's her name, in any case. If he's honest, he doesn't much like her as a stylist, a bit too radical for his tastes, but he did appreciate her work on Regulus St. James for the way it invigorated the viewers. "You seem to be in quite the rush, sir. I would have thought you'd be inside celebrating yourself, actually, and yet?" "Yes, well, something came up. Lovely talking to you, but I really must be going," Horace declares quickly, nodding at her politely before turning on his heel. "He will find you eventually," Dorcas announces before he could take one step, and he freezes in place. Slowly, he turns back around. She smiles at him without any warmth and drops the cigarette from the holder, grinding it under her heel as she slides the holder into the top knot on her head, making it look like the dragon is sleeping in a nest of braids. "As I thought, Riddle isn't pleased, is he?" Horace doesn't know what to say, and Dorcas doesn't give him very much time to think up a response, leaving him flustered. "It's a shame," Dorcas continues lightly. "I think what you did was revolutionary, Mr. Slughorn." She pauses, cocking her head and smiling wider, meaner, with an angle. "Though I suppose that's why Riddle isn't pleased. I didn't—" Horace swallows, flexing his fingers around the handle of his bag. "I had little choice. My hands were quite tied, seeing as the boy, James, left me no option." Dorcas hums, lips twitching. "I sympathize. I really do. That's the thing about the sun, isn't it? No matter what, it just keeps rising. You can't keep it down." Horace frowns. "What was I meant to do in that situation?" "I imagine Riddle would have preferred you to kill them both rather than let them live," Dorcas muses. "It's a dangerous thing, giving power to those that aren't meant to have it. I wasn't giving power. That may not have been your intention, Mr. Slughorn, but that is nevertheless what you've just done. It's a threat. What do you think Riddle does about threats? He eliminates them, Horace rasps, his mouth dry. Dorcas smiles again, just as sharp as before. When he can find them, that's exactly what he does. I'm assuming you'd like to not be found, yes? I'm not a threat, Horace insists, shaking his head, feeling too old and too out of his depth for such accusation. Then why are you running? Dorcas whispers, lips curled up as her eyes gleam. She stares him down, her gaze piercing, and then she walks up the dipping driveway out of the garage to stop on the street by a black car. She opens the passenger side door and turns to face him. Get in, Mr. Slughorn. I really have to be going, Horace says, his heart slamming away in his chest. I said, Dorcas repeats slowly, pushing open her coat by her hip to reveal a gun strapped to her belt. Get in. Horace forgets how to breathe for a moment, and he's quite sure his knees would be knocking together from how hard he's shaking if he dared to shift his feet. In his panic, he can only bluster. What will you do? Shoot me in the street? Where did you even come by a firearm? Only ours. Clearly not, Dorcas interrupts flatly, one eyebrow sweeping up as she rests her hand lazily on the gun, comfortable with it in a way that sends a chill down Horace's spine. And if I did shoot you in the street, who would care? I dare say Riddle would consider it justified now, wouldn't he? To that, Horace has no reply, because he thinks she's right. Get in the car, Dorcas orders sharply. I won't tell you again. Slowly, Horace walks forward on shaky legs, his heart pounding so hard that he can hear it in his head. He holds onto his bag like a shield, utterly terrified. But Dorcas watches him sidestep his way cautiously up to the car and ease inside. As soon as he's in, she shuts the door behind him and walks around to get in on the other side. Where are you taking me? Horace croaks, gripping his bag in his lap as Dorcas drives. Dorcas doesn't respond. In fact, she doesn't speak at all for quite some time, and Horace is almost certain she's doing it on purpose, just to further unnerve him. They drive deeper into the Hallow, into the heart of the city, and Horace debates on what he can do about his predicament. He's never fought anyone. He's never had a gun in his proximity as a threat, only ever as a form of protection. He's never felt fear, not true fear, like this. Fear for his life. The closest he ever came was when Regulus tossed a dagger at his head, and that had genuinely kept him up all night, thinking about how terribly close it had been. Horace is at first very sure that Dorcas Meadows works closely with Tom, and is the one tasked with seeing him eliminated, as all threats are. His mind races with the desperate need to avoid his fate, but no matter what he eventually comes up with, no plan seems practical. Then, without warning, Dorcas says, Mr. Slughorn, I work with an organization that takes issue with many things, all of which Riddle currently sits at the center of. The Hunger Games, the forced poverty, the inequality spread throughout the districts in comparison to the Hallow, just to name a few. You, Horace swivels his head to blink at her, admittedly startled. The only thing he can think to say is, but you're a Hallow, Miss Meadows. Ah, so you do see the issue, but you simply don't care when they don't apply to you, Dorcas murmurs, shaking her head as she heaves a sigh. You're not ignorant. No, you're worse. You're aware and willing to perpetuate the problems. I do no such thing, Horace sputters. I'm aware that I'm a Hallow, Mr. Slughorn, Dorcas continues, as if he hasn't spoken. That doesn't give me the right to avoid what's wrong in this world, or who is the source of it. Do you want to know how I am so sure that you've just provided ammunition to the side of the war that Riddle isn't on? The rule change, see? I spoke with Sirius yesterday, who gave you the idea to do it in the first place, and he said, No, you're misinformed, Horace cuts in. The idea was mine. Dorcas glances over and gives him a placid, patronizing smile. Sure it was, sir. In any case, Sirius mentioned that you were quite pleased about it, so why change it? You're the head game maker, and the only person who ranks above you with any influence on the games is Riddle himself. So, if you didn't want to change the rule, The only other person who could make you would be him. Now, why would he demand you to change the rule back if he didn't feel that Regulus and James were a threat to him, a threat to everything? Horace stares at her with wide eyes, once again feeling very out of his depth. He's not entirely sure what she's insinuating, and he doesn't understand what she means by war. There is no war. He can't fathom why there would need to be a war. What other side is there, and what are they even fighting for? To your credit, you did make an attempt to follow his orders, Dorcas continues. You just didn't follow through, and that surprises me. Surely you knew your life was at stake. I was aware, yes, but again, I wasn't sure what I was meant to do in that situation, Horace admits. If I did kill them both, my reputation would be in tatters. Is your reputation more important to you than your life, Mr. Slughorn? Dorcas asks. It's second only to my life, Horace declares with a frown, because a reputation is all a person has, really. It's all he's ever had. His reputation gets him connections, and his connections get him where he wants to be in life. Yes, to be alive is more important, but what is to live if he's not living as he wishes? Dorcas chuckles sardonically. Oh, they're going to eat you alive at the Phoenix. What? Horace's heart jumps again. The Phoenix? What is that? Is it a prison? Like Azkaban? Am I going to prison? Eh, Dorcas says lightly, tipping her head from side to side and waving her hand lazily. Or is it eh? It's more like I think. I'm going to prison? Horace chokes out. Yet again, Dorcas doesn't respond. She abruptly straightens up in her seat and grips the wheel with one hand, reaching down to grab the gear shift and yank it into a different gear. The car jolts forward, and Horace frantically looks out the front windshield, his eyes bulging as he realizes where they are. At the back of the city, there is a tunnel that was once undergoing construction decades ago, but was abandoned for some reason or other, and the only thing Horace knows about it for sure is that it's collapsed at the end and has a sinkhole in the middle. A sinkhole that Dorcas is speeding towards without batting an eye, the car revving as she pushes them faster, so much so that Horace feels sick. There's a sinkhole! Horace shrieks, flinging his hand up and bracing it against the ceiling of the car. Dorcas just laughs, low and smooth, as they approach the sinkhole far too quickly for them to be able to stop in time. Horace squeezes his eyes shut and flinches back into his seat, waiting for the impact, waiting for— You can open your eyes now, Dorcas says, amused. What? Horace rasps, his eyes snapping open to see them slowing a bit as they continue into the tunnel. He whips around to stare out the back windshield, his brain throwing question marks in every direction, because the sinkhole is still there. How did we— It's fake, Dorcas tells him. The Order filled it in years ago, and used tech to keep up the illusion that it's still there. It works as an alert system as well, so any second. She cuts herself off as the car starts ringing, the screen on her dash lighting up. She chuckles and reaches to answer, grinning as she says, How did you know it was me? Because you're the only one who speeds through, comes the stern, unimpressed tone from what Horace is sure is a woman. She sounds disapproving, like a mother. I'm in mind to leave you stranded at the gate, Dorcas. Oh, don't do that. I have something the Order is really going to like. Get the train going, please, Dorcas says. There's a beat of silence, then a hum. I see. The gate is dropping now. The train will be ready when you arrive. Thank you, Dorcas replies, then leans forward to press the screen. There was no display number or name. It's collapsed, Horace points out in distress as they head towards the blocked-off end of the tunnel that's just a wall of rocks and rubble, aged and dusty. Oh yeah, that's actually still real, Dorcas agrees as they drive right towards it. Horace reaches up to grab the handle above the door, clinging to his bag with his other hand, his heart hammering away as they get closer and closer. He's tempted to close his eyes again, and only just manages not to as they abruptly dip down an incline in the pavement that's not visible, a decline, that's not visible until they're driving down it, only a few feet before the collapsed end of the tunnel. The ground evens out again, and Horace stares wide-eyed at the long, dark tunnel beneath the one they just drove through, illuminated by the lights of Dorcas's car. When he glances back around the seat, the road that dipped down is rising back up, a ramp into the tunnel below that lifts in less than a minute. "Has this always been here?" Horace murmurs in awe. "Not always," Dorcas replies, "but for a long fucking time. Longer than Riddle has been master of the Hallow, though." "He's been master for quite some time," Horace says. "Believe it or not, there are people who are older than Riddle," Dorcas tells him. "People did come before him." "I'm older than Tom Riddle," Horace feels compelled to point out. "If you mean who was the master before him, of course I know that. I remember him, even all these years later. Gellert Grindelwald." "I'm not talking about the history of the Hallow," Dorcas declares, the car slowing as it goes around a curve and pulls off to the side. In front, there's an old train car, just one, and it's quite rusty. I know that already, even better than you do." Horace scoffs. "Impossible. I lived it." "Only one side of it," Dorcas counters, taking her seatbelt off and raising her eyebrows at him. "I've heard about the side you didn't know existed. Now, get out." "Where are we?" Horace demands, suspiciously, but Dorcas just ignores him and slips out of the car, going over to meet a woman that moves off the steps into the train. The woman has gray hair and wrinkles around her pinched mouth, but despite the signs of her age, she's dressed in black tactical pants, a gun strapped to her belt also, and a black tank top that shows off the tattoos that cover her arms from the top all the way down to her wrists on both. After a beat, Horace takes a deep breath and hauls himself out of the car, bag in hand. He approaches cautiously, and both women fall silent as soon as he comes within range. Dorcas turns to him, and the other woman stares down her nose at him like he's less impressive than a lump of dirt. Her lips press into a thin line, and she steps back, letting Dorcas wave him forward, gesturing to the train. Horace follows, but does move past her to look at the train, eyebrows furrowed. "It's your ride," Dorcas explains, and Horace turns to stare at her in disbelief, not even caring that he's standing next to the other woman. He's agitated that Dorcas has the audacity to believe that he's simply going to board a train without knowing where he's even going. She must see the indignation on his face, but it only makes her smile. "Oh, don't worry, Mr. Slughorn, the train is perfectly safe. It's never failed to make it to its destination before. I can assure you it never will." "I'm not going to just get on that train, Miss Meadows. Not without answers. That's preposterous," Horace hisses. Dorcas raises her eyebrows at him. "You're right. You have another option, of course. We won't make you go if you decide not to." Her eyes are cold as she steps forward, making him step back instinctively. "Your choice. You can either get on that train, or you can have your brains blown out." As soon as the words leave her mouth, Horace feels cold metal press against his temple, and he hears the distinct click of a gun's hammer tugging into place. He freezes, his stomach falling right out from under his feet, and it takes no time at all for him to start trembling all over. His fingers clasp the handle of his bag tight, and as much as it terrifies him, he darts his gaze to the side to look. And yes, that's a gun resting against the side of his head in the hand of a woman who looks unafraid to pull the trigger. "If you get on that train, you will be taken somewhere safe. You will be given food, your own space, and protection in the form of the only place in the world that Riddle cannot find you," Dorcas explains. "In exchange, you will not be asked to fight in a war. You will not be required to get your hands dirty in fixing the problems you helped maintain. You will not be tortured or killed." She steps forward again, reaching out to grasp his chin, eyes bright and blazing. "Where you will go, if you so choose, you will have better than you deserve." A whimper escapes Horace against his will. "I hope you say no," Dorcas whispers, her voice so sinister and harsh that Horace is just frozen, staring into her eyes like prey caught between the jaws of a predator. Her nails dig into the side of his face. "I would relish in getting to scrub your blood off the concrete beneath your feet, because you do not deserve to live, Horace Slughorn. Children are dead because of you, so I beg of you, choose not to get on that train." I... Horace's breath hitches, and he can only stumble over his words, feeling smaller and more afraid than he ever has in his life. He can't stop shaking. "How does it feel, game maker?" Dorcas asks softly, wrenching his head to the side to push him harder into the gun. A choked sound falls from his mouth, and Horace is helpless to the tears that spill out of his eyes. "Are you entertained?" "Please," Horace whimpers, squeezing his eyes shut. Dorcas digs her nails in deeper for a lingering moment, making it hurt, and then she releases him. His eyes peel open, and she curls her lips in disgust. "This is the last time I'll ask you, Mr. Slughorn. Will you get on the train or not?" Horace swallows, his breath escaping him all wobbly and shaky. "Yes, I'll get on the train." "Shame," Dorcas murmurs, and nothing has ever frightened Horace as much as the genuine disappointment in her voice, not even Tom Riddle's empty eyes. "Get in, then," the woman declares, lowering her gun and gesturing to the stairs. Horace practically rushes to get inside, and as he goes, he hears the woman say, "I'll see you in a few months' time, Dorcas." "You won't be at this post?" Dorcas asks. "No, Dumbledore has plans for me," is the woman's response, and the last thing Horace hears as he enters the train.